Yeah, Dr. Bridget, we have to unmute so that we can hear you.
Okay, sorry, I was just listening in.
Yeah, I think
Can you hear me?
we can hear you. Yeah. Oh,
Morning,
welcome.
Bridget.
Now we can see your face too.
Okay, okay.
So the stage is yours. Thank you for
uh,
coming. We appreciate your presence, and you can share your slides and then start the presentation. It's already 11 o'clock. Thank you. Well, Nigerian time.
okay, okay. So are we waiting for anyone else?
Yeah, other people will be joining us.
Let's
You
go
can
ahead.
just start, yes, and then we will be adding them as they are coming in. Thank you.
Okay, okay, perfect. Okay, so let me go back and share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, just a minute there. Okay. Sorry, it's just fiddling a little bit. Okay, let me know when you can see the screen.
Yeah, we can see the screen now.
Okay.
Uh, just make it a little bit larger, like
Yeah,
your
I'll just go.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Sopeju and Dr. Christian. I think Dr. Sopeju has done a brilliant job of introduction, so I wouldn't go into details. So basically, my talk today is about early detection of failed breeding. But so what we're going to do is actually focus on one tool that Adebayo intends to start working with in Nigeria. But what I will do is I will touch on some other technologies that have been used in the field. Um, okay, so a little bit about me. Sorry, I'm just gonna move this to down here. So that you're able to see. Yeah, that should be better. Okay. So my talk is really going to be very simple. So it's the first time I'm meeting on this platform many of the people here. I think there's one or two that I have met before, but I'll just give you a brief introduction of who I am, a little bit about my background, nothing too detailed, so don't worry, you're not going to fall asleep. And then we'll just go straight to just a brief introduction about the talk, what to expect to cover, and then we'll touch on reproductive management, and then move on to we just look at different aspects of reproductive management, and then move on to pregnancy diagnosis, and then sort of like keep narrowing down. So we'll be looking at progesterone based pregnancy diagnosis tools, and then now focus to the topic of the focus of the day really, which is a tool called P4 Rapid that's produced by a company in the UK. So at that point, I will take a little bit of a pause and then give you a snapshot of a study that I did for my PhD work with smallholder dairy farmers in Kenya. Perhaps I thought that would be interesting to give because it will give sort of like a perspective of how this tool can be used in Nigeria, and it will give you an idea whether this is going to be useful or not in Nigeria. And then the company has recently launched a new product that's called P4 Rapid Gold. So we'll briefly just look at that, and then and I mean it's fairly new in the market. There are a few customers predominantly in the UK that have used it. So we'll look at some of the customer views, and sort of it will give us an inkling into what to expect if we start using it. And then we'll just do some brief comparison. I mean, to be honest, it's still fairly new in the market. I haven't had a chance to physically try it out, so I'm going via the comparisons of people who have used it, but basically just to see what's the improvement of the older P4, what is it that we're trying to do. And really, just end with some takeaways from this talk, and then I'll open it up for a question and answer session. So I hope I've been clear up to that point. My connection isn't breaking or anything.
You're great.
No,
I can hear you.
great. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So oops, sorry, I went a little fast there. So so just push this back a little bit. So a little bit about me. I think unfortunately, because of having to do these kinds of meetings on Zoom as compared to doing one-on-one, we usually have to reacquaint ourselves. So my name is Bridgit Muasa. So as given in my profile before, I trained as a veterinarian at the University of Nairobi in Kenya. So previously then it used to be the only university that offered vet school, but now we have two in Kenya. So I studied in Kenya, it's called the Bachelor of Veterinary Medicine, and then moved on and did a master's degree at the same university in veterinary clinical studies, where I specialized in advanced theriogenology. That's a mouthful. And then, so I took a bit of time in between the master's and worked for the government of Kenya. So I still work for the government of Kenya to date as an assistant director of veterinary services at the State Department for Livestock. So here, I don't get to play with cows very much. I work in a lab. I still get to use my theriogenology knowledge, but mostly get to tap into my lab work skills. So after that, so after a couple of years of working with the government, so I went and did a PhD in developmental biology. This was jointly between the University of Edinburgh and Scotland's Rural College. So it was a joint degree, and it was funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I think that's where I met Mike, and I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of other people in the team. So part of my PhD work is I worked with smallholder. I was basically trying to look at reproductive management and trying to find solutions for smallholder dairy farmers, which is almost like a forgotten group, and they do have problems with their reproductive performance. So what I did was just test out technology that's available in the West, and in this case, it was in the large UK, and try and see what's the pathway to getting this to be used in smallholder setups in Kenya. And then I was looking at, was it a management issue, environment, and those kind of things. So I was predominantly focusing at that point on estrus detection. But as I went in with the smallholder farmers, did a survey, I actually realized pregnancy diagnosis was a big challenge for them. And so one of my projects sort of like metamorphosized and became something else. So part of this talk, I really want to give you a snapshot into part of that study. So for us to kind of have real life experience of P4 rapids in African setups. So I think at that point, by the time I was doing my PhD work, I don't think that I couldn't find any information of this kind of study being done in African kind of setups where we have small few number of animals and that kind of thing. So I thought it was important to have done it then. So sorry, enough about me. So going back to the topic of the day, so in a dairy enterprise, and I'm going to be focusing just on dairy in this, like reproductive failure remains one of the main reasons for culling, in dairy herds. So if your cows are not performing, and at this point, I'm going to apologize. I have dogs who don't understand that people have Zoom meetings. So if they make noise, please excuse me for that. So reproductive failure remains one of the reasons for culling in dairy herds. And this is because really in a dairy enterprise, what you're looking for is milk and replacement heifers. So if you don't have milk, or you need to get, a cow needs to get pregnant. Well, the easiest way for you to get milk is for a cow to get pregnant, and then it goes into lactation and starts producing milk. And you also need replacement heifers. So that's why reproduction is a very key reproductive failure can be quite detrimental in a dairy enterprise. So if we just focus on reproductive management, there are several steps where our reproductive failure can occur. So if we start immediately the cow is pregnant, so during gestation and parturition, which is the first step, you can have a lot of problems such as pregnancy loss or difficulty during calving, or which will impact on your reproductive performance. So suppose the cow manages to carry the pregnancy to term safely and gives birth with no problems, and then the next thing you want is, after a voluntary waiting period, you really want this cow to go back to cycling so that you can inseminate it again. That way your calving interval isn't outside the recommended stage. At this point, if your cow has like postpartum conditions such as uterine problems, or it was in poor body condition, so it fails to resume to cyclicity, that's a problem for you. That will prolong the time between calving to the next calving, which is your calving interval. So suppose again in this phase nothing happens, everything goes according to plan. So the next thing is your cow has gone back to cyclicity. Now, as a dairy enterprise where you're predominantly using AI, you don't have any bulls present, or other methods of assisted reproductive technologies, then the next thing you're going to want to do is detect estrus. So again, we're hoping everything goes according to plan, estrus is detected, is expressed correctly, and then you, as a farm manager, you have to detect estrus and then perform timely AI. So there's a cow part which has to express estrus, and there's a management part where you have to detect this estrus and then conduct timely AI. So again, up to this point, everything goes okay. The next thing is you've done your AI. You want to find out if your cow has conceived. So if you don't perform pregnancy diagnosis, or you perform it too long, you could assume that your cow has conceived, while in real sense it hasn't really conceived. Again, this is going to interfere with your reproductive indices. So for this part of the study, we're really just going to focus on pregnancy diagnosis. So pregnancy diagnosis in cows can be done in many ways. So the farmers I worked with, because I didn't have a lot of tools, mostly used nanny return to estrus. So you inseminate, and then the inseminator will tell you between this and this day, check whether she's going to be repeating, asking to be inseminated. So if the farmer doesn't detect whether it's a cow that didn't express or it's a farmer that didn't detect, then there's an assumption that the cow has conceived, and then you assume it's pregnant until 6 months down the line she shows heat again, and you realize either she never conceived or conceived and lost the conceptors. So that's one of the methods, and I guess it's the easiest and most widely used where the resources are limited. So another way you can use is direct methods. So this is actually just looking for the presence of a fetus. So in this case, you can use transrectal palpation, I think, which is fairly common here, and I'm guessing there as well. Or you can use ultrasonography, or you can use indirect methods, such as pregnancy-associated proteins, such as the pregnancy-associated glycoproteins or the early pregnancy factors. Or you can use endocrine hormones such as progesterone. So now, at this point, it's important, because we're going to be focusing on progesterone. It's important to mention that, yes, progesterone is an endocrine hormone, but it's not unique to pregnancy alone. And the methods that use progesterone for pregnancy diagnosis are really looking for a rise in progesterone at a certain point, because if you're familiar with the estrus cycle, you can have progesterone even when there's no pregnancy. But if you're looking for it at a certain point where the animal is supposed to be returning to estrus, then if you have high progesterone, then you suspect that the high progesterone is due to an animal having cycled. So it's due to the animal having cycled. So now we go to the focus of the day, which is progesterone tools, and really there's a myriad of tools that use progesterone as a non-pregnancy diagnosis. So you'll notice from now on I'll be saying as a non-pregnancy and not necessarily as a pregnancy diagnosis tool, because we've said it's not unique to pregnancy alone, though progesterone is a prerequisite for maintaining pregnancy. So you can have pen-side tests such as P4Rapid and now P4 Gold, or so you can have something that another lateral flow test that is produced by a company called Diagnostic for All. So I've tried to pick the tools that have been tested in Africa or are available in our situation. Or you can have lab-based. The same company that produces P4Rapid also produces a milk or serum ELISA that you can use to detect now. This is now a qualitative test to quantitative test to look at the amount of progesterone. Okay, so now moving on to P4Rapid. So P4Rapid is a lateral flow test that's produced by a company called Reproductive that's based out of the UK. So how it works, it's a fairly simple test, and so I guess one of the weaknesses is it doesn't work on heifers because it's a milk-based test, so it just works on lactating animals. But basically what you do is collect a sample of milk from a cow. You'd ideally let the first 3 sort of squeezings fall to the ground, and then collect just about 30 ml, even though you don't need that much, just a little bit into a sample collection pot. And then so mix this milk. Basically mixing is just making sure you're distributing the fat, because progesterone is a sterol-based hormone. And then when you mix it, just get a drop. The kit that comes with P4Rapid is actually supplied with little test tubes and droppers. So you take just about 1 squeeze worth of milk into the pipette. Put the strips of P4Rapid are individually wrapped and look like this. I hope you can see my mouse showing. So take the strip, open it. You need to label it if you have multiple cows, because again, you might want to keep a record of it, and then put it in the milk. Wait about 10 minutes, ideally anything more than 5 minutes, but it's preferably wait for about 10 minutes. Then at 10 minutes, you can really read the test. So how it works is this P4Rapid strip is embedded with a known amount of progesterone, which is about 2 nanograms per ml, and which is depicted is going to be on the control line. So ideally, what we're doing is testing this milk, whether the progesterone contained in this milk is less or more than 2 nanograms per ml. So if the test line, which is the one that's closer to where is written sample, is darker than the control line, then that's a case of low progesterone. So if this is in a cycling animal, then luteolysis has occurred and the animal is likely coming to estrus. But if the test line is lighter than the control line, then we're dealing with a case of high progesterone. And then if you are using it to test for estrus, then this animal is likely not in estrus. And for just to take you back, for the experiment that we did in Nairobi in Kenya, was predominantly, we went in trying to do estrus detection, but then we realized additional benefits when we were going on. So it became more valuable to the farmers as a non-pregnancy detection kit. So, so at this point, so allow me for the next couple of 5 or 6 slides to just give you a snapshot to the projects that we did in Kenya. And so, in this, so I'm just going to be telling you about the performance of a cow-side progesterone-based lateral flow test for pregnancy diagnosis under field conditions in smallholder dairy systems. So, and this work was done with various researchers from both SRUC and the University of Edinburgh. So when we went in, we first found out from the farmers, first, do you do pregnancy diagnosis? A lot of the farmers say yes, they do, and they either use rectal palpation at 90 days or more, or they use non-return to estrus to tell whether their animal has conceived. And for those who do rectal palpation, they first use non-return to estrus and then wait for about 3 months and then do the rectal palpation. So the reason they wait for about 90 days is because animal health services in Kenya are predominantly offered by animal health technicians. So, so usually who have about a 2-year training. So depending on their skill level and their comfort, they really don't want to do PD in small with small fetuses at about 60 days, where most veterinarians who've been in the field for longer would be able to detect a pregnancy at that level. So it's a safety issue, and also farmers feel like when their cows are pregnancy diagnosed at an early stage, they've usually lost their conceptors. So for this case, what we did, we recruited some farms in Kenya. So this is what a typical smallholder farm looks like. It could be anything from 2 milking cows to about 10 milking cows. That's the average. And some use machine milking, some use hand milking. It's not very sophisticated. So this was done in central Kenya. So in reference, this is Kenya from Nigeria. And then central Kenya is one of the most fertile regions, the highland region, and it's one of the most fertile areas for dairy production. So the climate can get quite, the altitude is high and the temperatures are chilly. So breeds, exotic breeds such as Holstein Friesians, Ashers, and Ganses tend to have less heat stress, so they perform better. So we find a lot of farmers in this area practicing dairy production. So we did about 30 smallholder farms in this area, and in total we had about 66 dairy cows, because in each farm will be required for you to have at least 2 milking cows that could be part of the study. And predominantly they were Holstein Friesian, a little bit of Ashers and Ganses, or crosses of this. We didn't have any in this study that were crossed with our indigenous breeds, because like I said, this area is a predominantly dairy area, so they tend to use these high producers. So what we did basically, we used P4Rapid, which I've explained is a lateral flow test, and it's an in-milk heat detection test. So for the current study, we were actually using an off-label use. So this only with P4 Gold now are they talking about using it from non-pregnancy, and a lot of that comes from the output of this study that we did, because we worked closely with the company. So for this, we use an off-label used for, and we're basically trying to look at non-pregnancy detection. So how it worked was, so Mike, can I just check whether you can see my cursor?
Yes, we can see your cursor.
Okay, good. Yes. Okay. So basically, what happens? So this would be, the green line would be the pattern of your progesterone concentration in a cycling animal. So at the point, so here, let's call it day 0, is a point that your cow was bullying, and then you detected estrus and you inseminated it. At this point, your progesterone concentration likely falls between 2 nanograms per ml. So the animal is inseminated here. So if we test the P4Rapid at this stage, it would probably give us this top results. So the animal is inseminated, the cycle continues, it continues, the progesterone rises as a new corpus luteum is formed. So when we get to the next cycle, if this animal didn't conceive, then there's no pregnancy, then there's a trigger for luteolysis, the corpus luteum is lysed, and the progesterone concentration begins to fall. So in this first scenario, which is about anything from 18 to 24 days, depending on the cycle length of the cow, the progesterone falls. If we come in and test at this point, then we can tell whether the progesterone is high or is low. So now we've already said that progesterone is a prerequisite for supporting pregnancy. So if we come at this point and find this, then we can likely say that it's, I mean, we can definitely say that it's not pregnant because progesterone is required to support pregnancy. But if we do come and find that it's high, you know, one of the questions we can ask ourselves, is it that this animal has a shorter cycle and we're actually finding it at this point, or it has a shorter cycle, so it's either here or it's already moved on to the next cycle, or it has a long cycle? That's one of the questions. So that's why we're using it as a non-pregnancy, because low progesterone means there's no conceptus. So for this case, we would go in and do PD by ultrasound and rectal palpation to confirm whether the animals had conceived, so that we can gauge how effective P4 Rapid was at determining our non-pregnancy. So in the case where the animal conceived, the progesterone concentration would keep on going high. And if we tested around this area, we'd probably find this result. So one of, in our particular study, one of the questions going in, there wasn't much data on, we know the modal cycle length for cows is about 21 days, but we just wanted to establish, what's the range for the cows here in Kenya. So we decided, why don't we test every other day on day 18, day 20, day 24, day 22, and day 24. And then now retrospectively look at the results for the animals that conceived and see, by using day 18 testing alone, could we, using P4 Rapid, could we have detected whether the progesterone concentration was low or high? Or day 18 alone, day 20 alone, day 22 alone, day 24 alone, or test on day 18, 20, 22, and 24 and look at the trend, or, test on day 18 and 20, or day 20 and 22, or day 22 and 24, like that. Basically look at which combination is actually going to give us the indication whether the animal had conceived or not. So what we found is, so the ideal you'd think is, what if I just took one test? Could that tell me whether my animal has conceived or not? And what was the sensitivity and specificity for that? So in this case, we look at the sensitivity of non-pregnancy. So when we took it at day 24 alone, there was no significant difference whether we took day 24 alone or we sampled on 2 consecutive days, or third and fourth day, which is 22 and 24 day testing. So basically what we found from this study is that if you inseminate and the day of insemination is day 0, and then you came in and 22 days later took a sample, tested it with P4, 24 days later, 24 days from insemination, took a sample, tested it with P4, you could actually tell whether your animal had not conceived. And that saves you a lot of trouble of, like, this smallholder farmers having to wait 90 days for that. So that was really what we got out from using P4 Rapid as an non-pregnancy test. So there was no benefit of testing more than 2 consecutive days and then taking fewer tests. And of course, there's a cost of about $2 or so associated with the test. So the fewer the tests we take, the better for us. But also for accuracy, taking at least a minimum of 2 tests on day 22 and 24 post-insemination could actually give us up to about 100% sensitivity in detecting non-pregnancy. So considering the farmers here would pay something about $10 and 90 days to tell. So this was actually spending about $4 one cycle in to tell whether your animal had conceived or not. Okay. So that's for that study, we used the original P4, which I'll show you what are the differences between the original P4 Rapid and now this that's called the P4 Gold test. So now I'm just going to take you through how this P4 Gold test looks like. So ideally, I'm just checking at the time to see I'm going to be finished soon. So the difference between P4 Rapid and P4 Gold is really there's a little dropper bottle with a reagent that you have to mix in prior to you putting your test strip in. So the procedure is the same. You really take the sample, you mix, squeeze the pipette once and put 5 drops in. So with this one, with the previous P4 Rapid, they didn't tell you how many drops. They just told you you shouldn't exceed this line in the test strip. But this tells you 5 drops. And when you put 5 drops, then you put 3 drops of the dropper bottle. You mix them well, and then this is a point that you add in your test strip, and then read once the time is over. So this has been tested in the UK, and this is what some of the farmers say, that P4 Gold is a no-nonsense approach to heat detection. So we find P4 Gold is easy to use and a great tool to enhance our breeding program, especially helping to detect silent heats. This is from a farmer in Ayrshire in the UK. So another farmer from Oxfordshire says, I use P4 Gold to confirm whether cows are definitely bulling or not, as well as confirming that in-calf cows are still in-calf. This can save a lot of money at about 25 to 35 pounds for sex semen. So another farmer from Yorkshire says, P4 Gold is more distinctive and easy to use. P4 Gold dipstick was used that morning to test a cow that was not showing any signs of bullying, and we had a good positive test, so the cow can be AI'd by my son. So it's really, I'm guessing these are farmers who had used P4 Rapid before and now are giving their testimonials on how P4 Gold is. So we hope if this is something that's that Nigerian farmers find that is beneficial for them, we can now start generating like really practical reviews from farmers on the ground. So comparing the two tests, the P4 Rapid and P4 Gold, is really P4 Rapid didn't have any addition of like a reagent in between. And one of the feedback I got from the farmers in Kenya, especially like the older ones, it was a little difficult for them to read some of these lines, especially where the test and control line were very close. It was hard for them to say it's lighter or darker. So P4 Rapid has fewer steps. P4 Gold has, this additional steps where you add some reagents and you mix again to mix the milk and the reagent, but the timing for reading is really still the same. So the company has made claims that P4 Gold is more clear. So I guess feedback from the farmers will let us know if this is true. So just to conclude, really, from the study that we did in Kenya and from the experience working with smallholder farmers, what really came out is pregnancy diagnosis is an important tool in the reproductive management of cows. And the earlier it's done, the better, because it saves you money, and you can now you don't have to assume that your cow is pregnant only to find later in that it's not pregnant, and you've lost future earnings from milk and future calves. So your calving interval is increased. And then farmers preferred a pen-side test to taking samples, sending them to the lab, or having a vet coming in. They want something that then they can do it themselves. So, and that tool really needs to be simple, no fuss, something that can be read easily. So these are the key takeaways that we got from that study, and that I would like you to take for selecting a pregnancy diagnosis tool. So that's my concluding slide, and so that's my email address. So I realize I've compressed it, the presentation a little bit, but at this point, I think I'll take it back to you, Mike and Adebayo, for any questions from the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget. You've done a great work, and yeah, it's an a very interesting presentation. Thank you so much. And I know there are people that may have one or two questions to ask. So please, if you have one or two questions you want to ask, you can just raise your hand, and then you're going to be given an opportunity to ask questions. So the floor is open. Bridget is available. So you can ask your questions so that at least we can be able to understand the implication of having to use this test, especially when we talk about better reproductive performance in cattle. So and the floor is open for you. But while we wait for somebody to ask questions, just let me confirm this. You talked about the study you did in Kenya and the feedback from the farmer. You remember during our discussion, we also talked about the line being visible enough for people to be able to make an inference from. We are of the opinion that the current one should be better to be able to make inference. So, do you think that during your study, the farmers' inference were affected by the color distinction when they were making their inference from what they have done in the farm?
Okay. Thank you, Adebayo. That's a very good question. So as part of the study, which I didn't present the results, so in this particular study, what I did was support the farmers to run the test by themselves. So I went in and, trained them. And what I trained them on was basically what's on the box. I showed them the test, and then I showed them how to run the test, really just reading through the instructions on the box, and then guide them to do it themselves. So at the end of the day, I would actually tell them to give me back the results, and that's the results that I would note down. And part of that was really to compare how just average farmers with varied levels of education, sometimes it was a farmhand, sometimes it was a farmer, really fared at interpreting this test. So at the end, what we did, we took about 30 tests that represented different levels, concentrations of progesterone, and then subjected it to 10 farmers, 10 male, 5 male, and 5 female, and really just asked them, like, from 1 to 30, without thinking, just say, is it lighter, is it darker, is it lighter, is it darker? And we saw a bit of a disparity. Age was a factor. The older the farmer, the the more challenging it was to distinguish between the ones that are very close. The test and the control line is very similar.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we also found that the women farmers, the female farmers, were better at telling the difference between the test and control lines. And this was gauged against an expert, in this case, which was me. I'd read thousands of tests at that point, and was corroborated by what the actual progesterone concentration by ELISA was.
As being a lady.
Yes, biased a little bit. But yes, what did come out as the feedback from the farmers is that they would need it to be concise. But the fortunate part was, the challenging part for them differentiating was really between the ones that are close, between where the test line and the control line is very close, not the ones that it's distinctly darker or distinctly lighter, which is a good thing, because when you get that uncertainty, the test actually tells you to retest. Because at that point, either the progesterone concentration is going low or it's rising. So if we retest after, say, 48 hours, then you will have a more definite answer. So the advantage for that is, even though the lines at that point were not clear, it was not a deal breaker in getting accurate results. So what we do hope with now P4 Gold is, yes, the lines will be a little bit more sharper, and the farmers can tell the difference better. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So another thing I would want to know is the detection of estrus, because from some of the comments that were made for the people that have used this before gold in the UK, they use it more to detect, or let me say, from some of what they have commented for the detection of estrus. What day would you advise that the P4 should be used for the detection of estrus, if that is the purpose why one wants to use it?
Okay, so you can, for the detection of estrus, again, just a bit of background to the study that we did. We also asked the farmers, what signs do you look out for when you're detecting estrus? And we found most of them were using very few signs. So the risk there was an animal that's not showing overt signs of estrus, then you'd actually miss it out. So if it's for detection of estrus, if you suspect that the signs you're seeing could be from estrus, but you're not sure, or you have two animals that are displaying estrus signs and you don't know which one is the one that's actually on estrus, at that point, if you tested both of them and they're open, then they're not pregnant at that point, the one with the low progesterone then is likely the one that's now approaching estrus. So it's one of the things that can be used by an inseminator. If a farmer has called him, like, I think my cow is on heat, he can use it as a second step confirmation. So farmers saw these signs, if there's low progesterone, and then when they're inseminating, it feels, then they can actually confirm at that point, yes, this corroborates with what the farmer saw. So the results would actually, low progesterone will be telling you that's the point of insemination. But this is really accompanied with, it's a very time specific thing, yeah.
Yeah,
And the
okay.
other that we saw, I'm sorry, just a little bit more, we saw is now checking for estrus after insemination. So which is basically looking at non-return at that point.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I'm also considering the fact that so there are some of the farmers that may not be able to appreciate the value that this is actually bringing on board when we consider the calving and between calving and conception. Because there are some people that believe that once the calf is still producing milk, there is no point bothering them for or bringing them for another AI or anything. So I just wanted to also touch on that point that now the animal has already calved and you are not even sure if the animal is on estrus. You are not, because you are not looking at that direction. You prefer the milk you're getting from the animal. So the animal is spending 3 months, 6 months on your farm, but because of the benefit of the milk you are getting, you don't want to bring the animal to for AI because of the milk production. So I want you to just talk more on this. That will it be advisable for a milking cow to be A-hide because it is the right time, or we should wait until probably the animal is showing some signs, and then we can say, okay, because the animal is showing some signs, then we can consider it for artificial insemination. Uh, do you think it's going to have any effect on the milk production if we hire an animal that we're of the opinion that probably, since we are still getting milk from, we don't want to take it to for artificial insemination. What's your opinion on that?
Okay, I think that's a really good question, and I guess I can see how some farmers would struggle with that. But one of the things is really looking at the pattern of like milk production in a cow. It peaks by about 90 days, and then goes on a flat curve for about 5-6 months, and then drops there off. So if you're going to milk this cow for more than 1 year, 2 years, the production you're getting will have gotten to the point that, if I can draw the curve is if, looks like this. If this is the point of calving, it really rises up to this point and then goes on to a plateau and then starts falling off.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is get the animal at the point that it's at its peak to plateau production as much as possible, because when it starts on the decline, you can milk this cow even for about even 3 years. I think I met a cow in a smallholder farm that had been milked for about 3-4 years. But at that point, the kind of milk production you're getting is the the value of the milk versus the cost of producing the milk is not balanced. Like the cow, maintaining the cow, feeding it and getting it to eat, and the milk that it's producing is not commensurate. So at this point, it becomes like you're keeping a pet. Is no longer efficient production.
Yeah.
So yes, so that is why when you try and get the animal to conceive within a set amount of time, which is about 90 days. That way it ensures that the animal returns to the first 1/3 of production as frequently as possible, because that's a point where it's most efficient at producing milk. And then you reduce the point that the animal is at on the decline phase. So I can see how farmers would be tempted to just let it produce. But if they really look at the cost of producing that liter of milk at the point where it's tapered off versus what they're feeding it, then they're not breaking even at that point.
Yeah.
So no. So the idea would be to inseminate within a set time.
A set time, okay, yeah. So I think I also get another point from what you just said now. I think the farmer will also gain more because they will allow the cow to be able to return to maximum milk production again in good time. So
Yes.
which is another profit for the farmer, and they may not be aware of that because of what they are looking at. Well, thank you
Yes.
very much, Bridget. Thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. It's actually an eye-opener, and it's been great having to go from one slide to the other, and the work you did and the results you got, giving us empirical value and figures about what we stand to gain from the use of these kits. And we, for the information of those that are on this training, very soon we're going to have these kits available in commercial quantity in Nigeria, and we'll be able to also have it being in circulation so that you can actually use it on your farm to be able to get a better performance when it comes to reproductive efficiency of your livestock. Thank you very much again, Bridget. And well, I would like to also thank Mike that has been hosting us. Mike, thank you very much. Well, Kara is on the call, and Handy also is on the call. Thank you very much for coming around. And for all the participants, we really appreciate your presence. There are still going to be more discussion around this, so we keep you updated. You can follow us on our social media platforms to be able to get an update about this. Once again, I thank everybody for coming, and I don't know if Mike has one or two things to say before we close the meeting.
No, I'm
I think
fine.
I see a raised hand, a couple of raised hands.
Okay, yeah. George has raised hand. Okay, George. Yeah, you can speak on. Hello, George. Hello, George. We can't hear you. Yeah, I think he's having a problem with network. George, are you there? George, you can type your question if you. Sorry, we can't hear you really, but you can type your question and send it. We will try to wait for a few minutes so that we can attend to your question. So please, you can type it. If you can hear us, type your questions. I'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes so that you can send in your question, and we'll allow Bridget to attend to it.
Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like?
Yeah, so if you also have questions, please, you can raise your hand so that you can be given opportunity. Or you can type. If you're having problem with network, you can type your questions and send the questions in. So we will attend to the question. We'll just read and attend to the question. So Bridget, we're just trying to wait a few minutes to allow Jared to type and send in the question.
That's right.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I think Kara is also here. Yeah, Kara,
Hello, Bio.
how are you?
Good, thanks. That was a good talk. Thanks very much, Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
Really useful. It'll be interesting to see how the Nigerian farmers potentially could make use of the product.
Yeah, thanks for your
Thank you.
contribution, support. It's really appreciated. Yeah. So if you have questions, you can still.
I don't think we're getting anything at about it.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So, well, George, I think you have an opportunity to ask questions. If you you can
Okay.
send the question to me. I can help you direct it to.
Can you hear me? Good morning.
Oh, okay.
Good morning. How are you? Thanks, Bridgit, for the presentation.
All right.
So what I want to ask is, if you want to get these P4 good, how do you get it and how much it cost in Nigeria?
I think perhaps that's a question more suited to Adebayo.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just try to answer the question. We currently are planning to have them in country. So let me say probably next month we should be able to have it in the country, and then by the time we have it in the country, we should be able to determine the cost too. And that's the reason why I advise that you should follow us on our social media platform, because we're going to update you on the progress when the kit is already in the country, the cost of the kits, everything will be well updated by the time we have access to it. Just follow us on our platform, and then we'll be able to update you on the availability of the kits and then the cost. And I think George has sent in the question. I just want to know if this.
No, I still have another question. You
Oh,
not
yeah.
finished.
Sorry. Go
So
ahead.
you said that you are still trying to finalize the cost, right?
Yes.
But how much are they selling it in the UK if someone wants to get it in the UK? How much was the price?
Okay. Yeah.
I can answer that.
Yeah, Andy is there. So Andy, thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. It's somewhere around $2.50 at the moment in the UK.
Okay, where can one get it in the UK? If you want to buy in the UK, is it on Amazon or where?
What can you buy it direct from the UK?
If someone wants to buy it in the UK, where can one get it in the UK?
Okay, the company that produce it are called Ridgeway Science,
Okay.
and I can send the link to Adebayo.
Okay.
And I think it is possible to order it direct from the company internationally, but I'm not certain about that. I mean, part of what we're actually trying to do is to familiarize vets and farmers with the product, with the potential usefulness of the product, and make it available in Nigeria.
Okay.
And this morning's session has been part of that familiarization, really. So
right.
We're hoping to, with the good offices of Adebayo, enable vets and farmers to get experience of using it, to see if it will have some utility, some usefulness in Nigeria, and then hopefully make it available on the market.
Okay, good. So this one, thank you very much, Andy. Adebayo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to ask something. Have you tried these products on our local animal or on Fraser in Nigeria? Have you tried it yourself in Nigeria?
Yeah, so if you listen to what Andy said, the phase in which we have now is the familiarization. The second phase we're going to is trying it on our local animals here.
Okay.
Then we'll be able to also have the result, make the results available to everybody of the performance of the kits locally. So that's the reason why I said we're going to be informed and aware about how things are progressing. But be sure we have your interest at heart, and that is what we are trying to ensure that we have a product available and at a very wonderful price.
Okay.
In Nigeria here.
Thank you very much. But what I just got this information of this meeting on a mini diary group. So I don't know, are you on that WhatsApp group?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So that's why, is it possible for you to give us, maybe put something, your contact, the link, so that people can get you directly?
Okay.
Because this meeting, so many people got this invite from friends, from different people. So if you can put something, tag something on this Zoom so that people can actually have your contact.
Okay.
Everybody's contact.
Let me try to do that once and for all.
Okay.
So I'm going to put my contact here.
Just a question that's come from George. He wants to know whether or not this product can be used for small ruminants, since research was basically tested on cattle. Andy, do you know whether it's been used on sheep and goats or camel?
You're on mute, Andy. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Theoretically, I would say yes, it can. I think there are some studies of the P4 Rapid product in sheep or goats. I'm not sure. I'm looking at Bridgit to see whether she nods her head or not. But the only reservation I would have is whether the cutoff point for a positive negative result would be quite the same for sheep and goats as it is currently set for cattle at, I think, 2 nanograms per mil, and whether that would be the right value for sheep and goats, I'm not sure, but I can try to find out an answer to that question. But theoretically, it could be used. Yes, might be an interesting experiment for somebody to do on somebody who's on this call.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Well, I've dropped my contact so for PIC on the chat box, so you can actually do that, and we can keep in touch and continue the dialogue after this presentation.
Thank you.
If there is any other question, we still have a few minutes before we call it a close.
Okay. Okay. For one, if someone buys one, this is me again. Sorry. If someone buy one kit, how many animal can you use it to test? Or is it one kit per animal?
So I can answer that. It's pretty much our single-use test.
Okay.
So you can only use it once. So, but the company provides them in packages of 25, ideally. But even for the smallholder study, we had them packaging it in 6 as well, and 3. But we found the package of 6 is what worked well for us. So, but no, the individual test is a single-use test.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have more questions, or we can say goodbye now? Yeah, so if there are no other questions, I think I should just appreciate everybody once again. And let me say, let's keep in touch, and we're planning great things for the development of livestock in Nigeria. And we are trying to ensure that that's manifest this very year. So let's keep in touch and follow the trend, and we'll be able to achieve what our minds to achieve. Once again, thank you, Bridgit. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, all the participants. Let me say goodbye for now.
Bridgit.
Thank you.
Now, Bridget, you have to tend down your dog.
Yeah, this one's my dog's this time.